Before Egypt raised its pyramids, before Rome dreamed of empire, before the great walls of China touched the horizon, here, between two rivers, the first great cities began to glow at night to iron the next hour. You will walk slowly through the birth, life, and fading of the oldest known civilization, Sumer, a world preserved only in broken clay tablets, in half-buried temples, in voices that survive as nothing more than scratch marks pressed into clay 5,000 years ago. This is not a race through history. This is a dream, a slow descent into deep time. Let the world around you fade. Lower the lights. Close your eyes if you wish, because to understand these people, to truly see them, we must begin with the land that cradled them. The land between the rivers point two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, flowing through what we now call Iraq, through a landscape that holds both promise and peril. Each year, the rivers swell with snow melt from distant mountains. The floods come, sometimes gentle, bringing rich silt that feeds the soil, sometimes violent, sweeping away homes and fields in a single night. Between the floods and the scorching desert, there is a ribbon of green, fertile, but fragile. Thousands of years ago, so long ago that the pyramids of Egypt were still unimaginable, small farming villages appeared along these rivers. Slowly, over centuries, over lifetimes stacked upon lifetimes, they grew. Imagine standing there, 5,000 years before this moment. You see reeds taller than a man, waving in the evening breeze. Mud brick huts clustered together, smoke rising from cooking fires, the distant call of waterbirds settling for the night. The people who lived here could not have known what they were building. They could not see the future spreading out from their simple villages. But from these quiet places, something new began to form. The first true cities. Civilization is not born in a day. It is not a sudden spark. It is a slow build. Generation after generation learning, adapting, growing. These early communities learned to guide the river's power. They dug canals. They directed water to their fields of barley and wheat. They built small shrines on raised platforms, places where they left offerings for the unseen powers that controlled the floods, the harvests, the cycles of life and death. And then, Uruk, one of the first great cities of this region. Not just a village anymore, but something vast, something unprecedented, crowds moving through narrow streets, workshops where craftsmen hammer copper and weave cloth, storerooms piled with grain jars, and rising above it all, temples, higher than anything that had ever been built. Reaching toward the sky here, in these growing cities, language evolved, culture deepened, religion became more complex. Gods took on names and stories, and what we call Sumerian began to emerge, a language, a people, an identity. As the cities grew, a new world appeared. The world of Sumer. Sumer was not one kingdom. It was a constellation, a network of powerful cities, each one a world unto itself. Each city, its own god, its own rulers, its own traditions. Uruk, where the goddess Inanna walked. Yor, blessed by the moon god Nana Lagash. Nippur, Eridu, the oldest of all. Picture yourself entering one of these cities. You pass through thick walls, walls that took years to build, mud brick upon mud brick. You enter narrow streets that wind between workshops and homes. You hear the ring of hammers on bronze, smell bread baking, see merchants arguing over the price of grain, children laughing as they chase each other through the shadows. And then you see it, rising above everything, a mountain made by human hands. The ziggurat, the temple, The house of the god, layer upon layer of sun-baked brick, climbing toward the heavens. At its summit, a shrine where only the highest priests dare to go from up there, the entire city spreads out below like a living offering. Every home, every street, every life, all existing under the gaze of the divine, each city believed it was chosen, blessed, that its patron god had selected this place above all others, and inside these walls, life followed a careful rhythm from sunrise in the fields to lamplight in the temples. Let us follow their rhythms. Let us walk through a single day in ancient Sumer. Society moved in layers, like the ziggurat itself, each level supporting the one above. At the foundation, farmers, men and women who worked the soil from dawn to dusk, who knew the feel of dirt under their fingernails and the weight of the sun on their backs. Above them, craftsmen, the potter shaping clay on his wheel, the weaver working her loom, the smith coaxing bronze into blades and tools, merchants who traveled between cities, carrying goods and news, scribes who could read and write, their knowledge giving them power, priests who spoke to the gods on behalf of the people, and at the top, rulers, kings and queens who claimed to govern by divine will. Imagine one life. A farmer, he wakes before dawn, ties on his sandals, simple leather straps worn smooth, steps out into the cool morning air. He walks to his field, opens a small channel to let water flow from the canal, watches it spread across the furrows where barley will grow. Meanwhile, in a dim temple office, a scribe sits cross-legged. Before him, a soft clay tablet. In his hand, a reed stylus. He presses careful signs into the surface, recording debts, tracking offerings, preserving agreements that must not be forgotten. By evening, the farmer returns home. A mud brick house with thick walls to keep out the heat. In the courtyard, his wife tends a cooking fire, bread baking, a pot of stew, lentils, onions, perhaps a bit of fish beer, thick and nourishing, poured into clay cups. Dates for sweetness, simple food. Simple lives. Their worries were floods that might destroy the harvest, droughts that might starve the city, taxes owed to the temple, the moods of their gods not so different from our own fears. Really just older, but there was another world, invisible, ever present, woven through every moment of life. The world of the gods. Every corner of existence was under divine care. The sky god, vast and distant. Enlil, lord of storms, whose anger could shatter cities. Enki, god of wisdom and fresh water, who whispered secrets to those who listened. Inanna, goddess of love and war, beautiful and terrible night in a temple. Flickering oil lamps cast long shadows on the walls. Incense smoke rises, carrying prayers upward. Distant chanting, low and rhythmic, echoes through stone corridors. The Sumerians told stories. Stories of creation, of great floods that nearly drowned the world, of heroes who walked between mortals and gods. They spoke of a time when the gods grew tired of humanity's noise and sent a flood to silence them. But one man was warned. He built a boat, saved his family, animals, and the seeds of life. When the waters receded, the world began again. To know the will of the gods, priests read signs, the patterns in stars, the images in dreams, the shape of a sacrificed animal's liver. Everything was a message if you knew how to read it. The universe was not random. It was not chaos. It was a careful balance between order and disorder, between the divine and the earthly, and to keep that balance, to keep the gods pleased and the world in order, they needed more than memory. They needed a way to record the will of heaven and the debts of earth. They needed permanence. First, it was simple. Small clay tokens to represent quantities. One token for a jar of oil, another for a sheep. But as cities grew, as trade expanded, as temple storerooms filled with more goods than memory could track, something new was needed. Someone made marks. Not pictures, exactly. Symbols. A circle for sun, a wavy line for water. Simple shapes to represent things, ideas, sounds. Over time, these marks evolved. They became wedge-shaped impressions. Cuneiform. From the Latin cuneus, wedge, watch a scribe at work. His hand moves with practiced precision. The reed stylus presses into soft clay, leaving its distinctive triangular mark. Each sign is deliberate. Each carries meaning. When finished, the tablet dries in the sun, hardens, becomes nearly eternal. These tablets recorded everything: grain harvests, temple offerings, sales of land, marriage contracts, court cases, royal decrees. They created the machinery of civilization. Written law, documented agreements, accountability. But it was more than bureaucracy. The Sumerians developed mathematics. They counted in base 60, a system we still use for time and angles. 60 seconds, 60 minutes, 360 degrees. They tracked the movements of stars and planets, created calendars to predict the seasons, knew when to plant and when to harvest. In quiet rooms scattered across the cities, young boys practiced their signs, over and over, copying ancient texts, learning the hundreds of symbols needed to be literate, and they wrote stories. The Epic of Gilgamesh, tales of gods and heroes, poetry, prayers, laments. In these quiet rooms of clay and reeds, humanity began to write its memory into the world. The past could now speak to the future. Asterisk. But cities with walls also have enemies. The Sumerian city-states, each proud, each powerful, did not always live in peace. Sometimes they fought. Over land, over water rights, over prestige and the favor of the gods. Armies were not swift. They were slow-moving columns of men carrying spears and shields. Chariots pulled by donkeys. The horse had not yet arrived. Supply carts creaking under the weight of grain and weapons. Kings who won battles carved their victories into stone. Grand monuments listing every city conquered, every enemy defeated, every treasure seized. I, the great king, beloved of the gods, destroyer of my enemies, builder of temples. They wanted desperately to be remembered. Power shifted. One city rose to dominance, then another. Lagash, Umma, Uruk, Yor. Each had its moment of glory. The royal standard of your shows both sides of kingship. On one side, war, chariots trampling enemies, prisoners led in chains. On the other, peace, a great feast, musicians playing, the king receiving tribute. But no dynasty lasted forever. Sons failed to match their fathers. Floods destroyed carefully built canals. Neighbors grew strong while you grew weak. The cycle turned. Rise and fall. Glory and ruin. Even the greatest walls crumble. Even the most powerful kings grow quiet in the dust, and something else was coming. Changes that walls could not stop. The land itself began to fail them. Centuries of irrigation had brought salt to the surface. The soil, once dark and rich, turned white and bitter. Crops grew thin. Harvest shrank. Canals silted up or changed course. Water that had once flowed reliably became scarce. Fields lay empty. Granaries stood silent. Some people left, moved north, sought better land, and others arrived. Peoples from the north and west, speaking different languages, bringing new gods, new customs. The cities that had been purely Sumerian began to change. New rulers took power. They adopted Sumerian culture, yes, the writing, the gods, the rituals, but they spoke Akkadian, not Sumerian. The old language began its slow retreat, first from the streets, then from the markets. Finally, only in temples and schools, Sumerian became what Latin would later become, a language of scholars and priests. Sacred, but no longer living, yet the temples remained. The gods kept their names. The ziggurats still stood. The new peoples reused the old temples, honored the same gods, copied the ancient texts. By 1800 BCE, Sumerian as a spoken language was dead, but the culture, the ideas, the stories, they sank like footprints beneath new layers of sand. The voices of Sumer did not vanish. They simply waited today. In museums around the world, clay tablets sit in climate-controlled cases. Each one a message from 5,000 years ago. What did Sumer give us? Cities. The very concept of urban life writing. The ability to record and remember law. The idea that society needs rules written down for all to see. Literature. Stories. That still move us. Mathematics and astronomy. The foundation of science. The Epic of Gilgamesh, which asks questions we still ask today. What is the meaning of life? How do we face death? What makes us human? But here's the mystery. Many tablets remain unread. Thousands more lie buried, waiting beneath Iraqi sands. Lost stories, forgotten names, entire libraries that may never see light again. The tells, ancient city mounds, dot the landscape. Most have never been excavated. What knowledge rests there? What voices wait to speak? The rivers still flow. The Tigris, the Euphrates, the same stars that Sumerian priests once read for omens still wheel overhead. The cities are gone. The ziggurats have crumbled. The people have faded into time, but long after their walls turned to dust, long after their names were forgotten, the people of Sumer still speak. In clay, in stories, in the very idea of civilization itself. If you listen closely, in the quiet, you can almost hear them, voices in the dark, waiting to be heard.